Thank you, Alexandra, for the introduction. Good morning. I'm really excited to be here. I want to make a note that my session is going to focus mainly on organic social media. And when I say social media, traditionally we think of platforms I like to call the big three: Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But there are many more platforms that we use every single day that can be classified as social media. They all kind of do the same thing, but for different types of people. We're going to explore the concept of social media, and I'm going to work to change your perception of it. I'm going to start with a little bit of background about myself. I have 10 years of social media and marketing experience. These are some of the places that I lived and the markets in which I've been responsible. I've worked with everything from startups to SMEs to multinationals, and you can see a wide gamut with the industries as well. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to redefine social media. So social, as defined by the Oxford English Dictionary, it's related to meeting and spending time with people, usually for pleasure. We can socialize at work. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's not. It also has to do with the rank a person has in society. Now, this is important when you're thinking about a clout score on social media or perhaps a verified check mark. And then there's media. Media is anything that is mass communication. It was publishing, it was broadcasting, but that's been accelerated by the internet. And then there's marketing, but we're at a marketing conference, so I'm not going to explain to you what marketing is. However, when you combine the three, what's changed is that the mass communication is now a two-way conversation. It's no longer publishers speaking at their audience. The audience can also talk back to the publishers or talk to each other. And it's active. It's not a passive activity. So I've identified some characteristics that all of these platforms have in common. The first is individual user accounts. This is where you can make your presence known on the internet. You can upload a photo, maybe even a cover photo, put a little biography about yourself, but you establish your presence on these platforms. And then there's a personalized feed. Not one feed is exactly alike on the social media platforms because we all know different people, we all like different companies, we all are related to different people. And then there's the broadcasting or posting feature, which I mentioned. People are able to speak from their profiles to the world to broadcast messages. And then there's a hyperlinking ability. You can link from your social media site, from your platform, perhaps to another platform where they can talk to each other, or you can link off of the site. And then there's the interaction with the media. We commonly think of these as likes, shares, comments, retweets, tags, any type of thing that we do with that media on the platform, you can interact with it. And then there's private messaging. If you decide that you don't want to speak publicly to the world, you can message people privately. Now that I've abstracted the idea of social media, I want you to think about this and keep this with you throughout the session. And I want you to think of social media as simply a distribution channel for your information. So, now that we have a new definition of social media, the next thing that we want to do is we want to go through an audit. The first thing that you want to do is list all of the profiles you have. Now, you may only be on 5 platforms, but you could have up to 180 profiles or however many, because this could be segmented by language, by market, by product, a myriad of things. But you want to know the scope of your social media responsibility. You want to list your goals, and you want to ask yourself, why are we on these platforms? Are we on these platforms? Do we have Twitter because someone created a Twitter account in 2010, that person no longer works here, but we just keep tweeting into the void? You want to find out what social networks are big in your market, and I'm going to talk about that on the next couple of slides. But for instance, Pinterest is huge in Sweden, but it's not so big in Italy. That's something that you need to know when you're making your social media strategy. And you want to look at your competitors. You want to see what platforms are they on. Perhaps you work at Daimler, and you notice that BMW has 35 Instagram accounts. You need to be cognizant of this because your customers are the same customers, and maybe your customers are going to expect that you also have 35 Instagram accounts. And you want to see which platforms bring you the most engagement. Now, you want to look at 2 things. You want to look at the actual number of engagements. Is it 4,000 engagements? Is it 400,000? Or is it 4 million engagements? And then also, you want to look at the engagement rate. The way that I calculate engagement rate is the number of engagements divided by the reach, because as you know, if someone shares your social media post, and they don't and their friend sees it and their friend doesn't follow you, but they interact with it, you've now reached outside of your audience. That's very important to know. And you want to ask yourself, can we feed the content monster? Do you have an in-house design team to make you photos, videos, GIFs, long-form blog content, white papers? If not, do you have the budget to hire an agency or freelancers? If you do have this budget, do you have someone on your team that can brief those people to make sure that the content stays aligned with your brand? And you want to get your customer data. You want to go down to the data team, you want to go to the BI team, and you want to see who are the people that are actually buying your products. And then you want to look at your social media fans and you want to compare it. Is there overlap? Great. Is there gaps? Not so great. How are you going to fix that? And then you want to ask yourself, are we reaching our total addressable market? Now, this is something that you can do through TV or through out of home, but I want to argue that you can also do it through social media. So these are the top 10 social media sites around the world. The one on the left is by web visits. The one on the right is by active users. I have noted the top 7 social media sites in Sweden by putting a Swedish flag next to it. For our context, I have removed Russian and Chinese sites because they would skew the data too much. And you're probably wondering why these lists aren't identical. The question is quite simple. It's because some people are visiting these websites when they're not logged in to the platform. Something that I thought was interesting about this was Medium is actually number 9, and Medium is essentially content marketing. It's written. And then there's Tumblr. So Tumblr is at number 7 in the world and number 6 in Sweden. I personally haven't used Tumblr since 2013 in a work context. And as you can see, Facebook is number 1. It's a necessary evil. We all have to have a Facebook page. What is interesting about this data is that there are now messaging apps listed. You can see WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, and Skype. Those are all essentially just messaging platforms. Now, a couple years ago, this wouldn't have been considered social media, but now it is. So that leads us to our next step. Explore. So we have a new definition of social media. We've done our audit, and we see which are the top 10 sites in the world. What can we do with this? We can look at other types of social media. So the first thing I want to talk about is messaging. Messaging is a great way to integrate yourself to where your customers naturally are, and they will more easily think of you as a friend. So these are 3 platforms: WhatsApp, Telegram, and Messenger. We all probably have WhatsApp. A few people probably have Telegram, and we all still have Facebook Messenger. So one feature that you can do on these is called broadcasting or channels. This is where you have a one-way conversation and you put that out into the world. You can think of it as the front page of a newspaper. And then there are groups. So groups you can think of as essentially AOL chat rooms. One really cool thing that you can do with groups that I wanted to tell you about is a company called Lithion, and they are a green energy company based in Berlin, Germany. So last week, they raised $1.5 million USD in 18 minutes and 14 seconds. And they did this with the power of their Telegram group. They have more people in their Telegram group than they do on their traditional social media platforms. And I actually have an example. That's an example of their Telegram group. And then there are bots. Bots provide a very curated user experience where your users already are. One example of this is a company based out of Berlin called Moberries, and it's an HR tech company that uses AI to match people to jobs. That's an example right there of their bot. So what you do is you go to their website, you make a profile, you check some buttons to see what your skills are, and then you can go to Facebook. The bot's name is Mo, and you can say, "Hey Mo, find me a job." And Mo will say, "Okay, Kelly, based on your CV and the skills that you've checked, you qualify for these social media manager jobs." And then I can just click yes or no and then apply through the jobs through the Facebook bot. It's no extra cost to build an app, and it's already integrated to where all of the other messages are. So you're normalizing this bot as a friend. So you can do research. Like I said, these groups and channels are public. You as the company can look and see how people are talking with your brand and interacting with your brand. You can also do PR. Instead of going the traditional route by contacting newspapers, blogs, television stations, or just sending out to your normal press release, you can instead send it to one of these groups and have advocates for your brand spread it on your behalf. And then you can do CRM for VIPs. So let's say that you have customers that spend above a certain threshold. You can start a WhatsApp group for them, or perhaps a Telegram group, depending on what your industry is. Now, WhatsApp is a little bit more personal than email, and also the people in there could possibly help each other or exchange tips. Does anyone in here not use Google to find things on the internet? Okay, we're all on the same page. So one really cool feature on Google is called Google My Business. This box that's here on the right side is a business. It's called Just Mind. You see that they have some photos. You see that there's Google reviews, and there's the pertinent information. Now, you do have control over this. If you Google My Business, you can claim your Google Business page if you already haven't. A really cool thing about Google My Business is the box underneath it, which is essentially a Facebook wall. You can post things to the internet, to the public, for everyone that Googles your business to see. Now, the reach on this is way more than any other social media platform, because every time someone literally Googles your business, they see this. So whether you have a new white paper, a new product, an event, or possibly a sale or a coupon that you want to offer, you can put this onto Google. And there's a CTA feature, so people can click off of Google and onto the landing page that you've created for this promotion. Google My Business is also really good because people that don't necessarily follow you on social media can see your post. This is a feature of Google My Business, which is messaging. This is probably better catered towards small businesses, or perhaps agencies or restaurants or sole proprietorships. This is a restaurant where you can message, and as you can see, the person has messaged the restaurant and they would like to make a reservation. As you know, our communication is moving away from the telephone and more to messaging. I think the only person I still talk to on the telephone is my grandmother, and that's because she doesn't have a smartphone. So communities. Social media is constantly evolving and it's constantly changing. One of the first communities that I ever joined on the internet was back in 1998, and it was a site called laundromatic.net. And what we did is we bought and sold items to each other all across the world. I never forget that I bought some Chinese New Year envelopes one year, and they were red and they were beautiful. I'd never seen anything like it, and I'm still talking about it today because it meant so much to me. There was another part of the website where we also essentially talked in forums, and I talked about the Backstreet Boys. But I came together online with people that had a common interest with me, and this was essentially the precursor to Etsy, eBay, and Craigslist. And I'm making this example to let you know that with the new platforms, there's always DNA that's passed on from the old ones. So Facebook groups. We all know that Facebook has their foot on the neck of organic reach, and some companies are saying that the organic reach on their pages are down to about 1% to 3%. A way around this is closed Facebook groups. So we all know the economic principle of supply and demand. When your supply is low, your demand is high, and scarcity is created. And in 2019, we call scarcity FOMO. And you can create FOMO by creating closed Facebook groups where people have to apply to get in. And the reach in those groups are better than on the walls. And then there are on-domain communities like Reddit. That's just one example where the entire domain is the community. Some other example of smaller on-domain communities are perhaps the forums on Etsy. There's some fintechs out of the UK called called Revolut and Monzo, and they have on-domain communities on there as well. You perhaps have probably visited an Apple on-domain community when your iPhone stops working and you can't figure out why. One way that you could take advantage of on-domain communities is perhaps you're a software company. You can find your evangelist on Reddit and really get them to promote your brand. And then there's Twitch. Twitch is an online streaming service that is interactive. It's not like YouTube, where it's a passive activity and you watch a recorded video. You can actually interact live. One example that you could do with Twitch is, let's say you worked at a medical device company, and you could stream live from a physician's office the person using your new medical device. Other potential customers or people that already have the device can log into it. Or perhaps you could have a customer stream from their home, and they can invite other people in their local community, and they can join together and talk about how this medical device has improved their lives for the better. And then there's Meetups. So Meetup is an online community where you can go to meet people offline that have the same interest as you. Reviews. So whether you're trying to grow your brand trust or show your brand trust, reviews are a great way to do that. Also, you can do research in there. We all know that focus groups and traditional market research can take anywhere from 6 months to a year, and sometimes you just don't have that type of time. So you can organize the data that you find in reviews, and you can recognize the patterns. And then you can feed this back to your product department and to your R&D department, and you can get things implemented a lot more quickly. So obviously, if you have an app, you're going to be in the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. Trustpilot. Trustpilot is a site that's big here in Europe where people review things like utility companies, phone companies, insurance companies, all of the necessary things that we need for adulting. And then there's Google reviews. I mentioned that a couple of slides back. People are going to see this on the front page of your Google results. It's very important that you keep tabs on them. Perhaps you have a PR crisis and then people start leaving a lot of bad reviews and it messes up your reviews because actually it was just one incident and it wasn't over the lifetime of your company and you aren't that terrible. So it's very important that you keep a close eye on these. And then there's Amazon.com. This could be any e-commerce retailer. I just chose Amazon. If you're selling products online, it's very important that you are looking at what people are saying because obviously your other customers are going to go there before they purchase a product from you and see how other people liked it. And then I put these stars up here. So these stars can be any review anywhere on the internet. Maybe it's even testimonials that are on your website or somewhere else. Now, something cool that you can do with reviews is you can blow your customer's mind. You can actually answer them, and you can let them know that they're not screaming into the void. The rule of thumb that I like to keep is if it's 3 stars or less, that review gets answered, because with that, you have the chance to turn your brand detractors into your brand champions. And podcast. Is there anyone in here that doesn't know what a podcast is? Don't be shy. Okay. All right. So we all know what podcasts are. So these are the top 7 countries that have the largest penetration of podcasts. As you can see, Sweden is number 3 on this list. So over a third of adults say that they listen to podcasts. I personally listen to about 3 to 4 hours of podcasts a day. And I'm able to do this because podcasting is actually a passive activity. It's not a video. I don't have to stare at my phone or my screen all day. And it's amazing. I'm able to absorb lots of information. So one way that you could use podcasts, perhaps for your company, is let's say you have a camera-shy team. They don't want to be on camera. They're super passionate about their job, but they are not passionate about speaking on film for this. You could get a very nice microphone. Do not use the mic that's built into your computer. Microphones only cost about $100. Trust me, it's worth it to keep your brand value high. You can interview perhaps a supply chain manager or a site manager, someone that really knows your product and how to use it and how it works in the field. And you can turn this into a podcast. And the audience of this podcast can really connect over their shared experiences and their shared interests through this podcast. You can basically think about podcasts as a substitute white paper, and it's a lot easier to digest. Podcasts, the great thing about them is that the male to female ratio is almost quite even, and 98% of people that listen to podcasts, they use social media. And then podcast listeners are more likely to follow the companies and brands of these podcasts on social media. So there you have the social media channels interacting with each other. And podcasts are a really big opportunity for storytelling. Humans, one of the oldest ways that we communicated is storytelling. And before we invented writing, we used to tell each other stories. So why don't we stick to this oral tradition and keep passing stories down? Also with podcasts, you want to think about what is your audience doing while they're listening to this podcast. Is your audience perhaps a business traveler? Well, you can maybe do a podcast about industry news or about product information, something to keep them busy while they're sitting in planes and trains and automobiles. And perhaps your customer is operating heavy machinery all day. Well, instead of them listening to their favorite music, they could listen to a story about people who are just like them from another part of the world using the same products. So now we have thought about redefining social media. We've done an audit. We know what social media is big. We've explored new social media avenues. We're going to go back into the conference room and we're going to redo our social media strategy. Now, in the audit, I talked about goals. This is not an exhaustive list by any means because you guys don't want to hear me talk about this for 7 hours. But these are some of the things and some of the channels that you can use for goals on social media. So for example, if your goal is brand awareness, these are some of the channels that you can use. I do not recommend trying to do brand awareness on Skype or Reddit. It's going to be weird and it's probably not going to work. There's product education. So perhaps you need to translate your product experience into a social media community. These are the easiest channels in which you can do that. And also when you see Facebook and Instagram, I want you to remember, I technically think of Facebook stories and Instagram stories as a separate platform from Facebook and Instagram. And the cool thing about Instagram is that if you make a story with one click of a button, you can push that to Facebook. There's no reason why you shouldn't be doing that, especially the way that Facebook is doing with organic reach. And that little story is going to be at the top of someone's Facebook app or at the top of the browser whenever they log in. It's a really good way to stay at the top of mind for your customers. Leads. I personally think that these are the best way to get leads. And sales. So Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest do have the e-commerce feature where you can buy directly from those platforms now. And then customer support. I think that the airlines have this correct with doing customer support on Twitter and then also messaging. There's a company that I use in Germany called Westwing Now. It's a home goods company. And whenever I have a problem or I'm wondering where my shipment is, there's a bot that they've built within WhatsApp. And I just message the bot on WhatsApp, and it tells me and it gives me updates. And it's way easier than checking my email or calling them and waiting on hold. And then market research. As I said, you can do this quick and easy and in your office and at no additional cost. And then finally, recruitment. I think that you should keep employer brand off of the big three. No one wants to see a photo of you sitting at their desk while they're at their desk. Okay, so everybody, get your phones out. This is the slide that you want to take a picture of once I put all of the information up there, because it fully answers the question, what social media platforms really matter for your business? So if you're B2B, check out these platforms. Please make a note that I have bolded the top social media platforms in Sweden. And then if you're B2C, you can check out these. And you want to ask yourself too, are these platforms being handled by your marketing team? Maybe they're perhaps in your customer service team. Maybe you should move them into the marketing team to make sure that you have a more holistic and truly omni-channel marketing approach. And I want to give you 3 things to do. I want you to keep focusing on platforms with overlap between fans, customers, and target audiences. And note that is 3 different segments of people. It's the people that like you on social media, the people that are buying your product, and the people that you want to buy your product. And if you are somehow hitting all 3 of those, keep doing that. Stop having a presence everywhere. Don't feel like you need to have a social media platform for every single market that you're in. Perhaps you have a Facebook page that only has 5,000 fans, but there's not really any business value in that market. You can delete that Facebook page. Those 5,000 people, they're not going to miss you. They will go somewhere else on the internet. And try something new. Be creative. There is software that you can use by Adobe called Adobe Spark Post, and you can quickly reformat your content so you can get things across channels. And I want you to remember this. These platforms are their own living, breathing ecosystems. They're constantly changing and evolving, but they're always bringing with them DNA from their predecessors. It's imperative that you understand your business, these platforms, and how they can best live symbiotically. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. I think we have questions. One question from the audience. Yes?
All right. So one question is, what do you see about, like, if you take social networks and you look at the hyperlocal perspective, where do you think we'll go in the next 5 years?
From a hyperlocal perspective, where will we go in the next 5 years? When you say hyperlocal, do you mean by city or by country?
Yeah, like geographically, it could be like in a country, but like smaller areas, like neighborhoods, for example.
I think one of the cool features that is on social media is the location tagging. And I think that the platforms will continue to do location tagging, and that a new platform will come out of that location tagging feature. And whether you're a local or whether you're traveling, that's something that's going to be super important.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kelly.